I'm not trying to criticize our medical system or whatever, but I do feel that the burden that they have to deal with, they need to clear up and make some beds. Our government doesn't give a shit about funding the medical system the way they should. All of the hospitals are underfunded. Like, why do we live in a society where hospitals have to do fundraising and get private citizens to donate money? Like, why is that? Why does, like, you know, the Canadian Cancer Society and this organization, that organization, the Sick Kids Hospital, why do they need to do fundraising to be able to pay the bills or to advance in any way? It's ridiculous. What's the point of the government? Why isn't why do we need to
busy fixing roads?
why do we need to have charities that have to raise money for people who are living unfortunate circumstances throughout the world, right? Like, you have, like, you know, UN Refugee, you have, like, UNICEF, you have all these charities that collect money from us, private people donate, to help people who are suffering throughout the world. Why aren't the governments doing anything about it? But then whenever there's, like, a big catastrophe, like, you know, a tsunami, all of a sudden all these fucking people, these countries donate like hundreds of millions of dollars, only 2% of the money actually goes anywhere. Yeah. Like, you guys remember when Haiti had the tsunami, right? Yep. So the Clinton Foundation raised, and I'm going to I might be off with the number, they raised over $100 million. Okay? Guess how much money went to Haiti?
I'm going to say
almost none.
Like less than 5%.
I'm going to say 100,000.
And the rest of the money was admin costs.
Yeah, I was going to say, because even when you donate to, say, anybody but Ronald McDonald.
Fiona, just talking to your mic. Can't hear you.
To all the workers?
Yeah, so you're right. So what happens is the workers they have are like NGOs, right? So these NGOs went to fucking Haiti. They flew business class or first class. They stay in the best hotels, had limos to pick them up. So each NGO was costing, like, you know, 7, 8, 10 grand a week just to keep them, you know, just to keep them there.
That's
and
insane.
It's like, yeah. So again, when it comes to helping those who need help, I don't really feel that our governments do enough for them. You look at what happened in COVID with the impact on retirement homes. I mean, how hard was it to protect people? Give me a fucking break. They're already confined. So there's no worry about a lockdown. They're already in the retirement home. Like, it's not like us where we're free birds. We're going to leave and go socialize. They're in the retirement home 99.9% of the time. If their family comes to visit, they go sit on a bench. But they're not going out shopping and they're not going to ice skating and watching a movie. They're in the retirement home. So now you seal it up. You have, you know, you have a system set up when nurses come in, they got to be tested, blah, 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 blah. But the amount of people that died during COVID in Canada in retirement homes is sickening.
I can attest firsthand to this because my grandmother's nursing home, and my dad, granted, pays a lot of money out of pocket for this thing. It's not, she's in a boutique thing. He made sure she was at least well set up. But this is what killed me is during COVID, they had, when you first walk in, it's like a little table booth, and they have COVID tests set up there for you that you have to do, right? And there's a nurse's station, but there's no one at the nurse's station. Mm-hmm. So I would count so many people just walk in and they wouldn't do the test, even though there's a sign up showing the instructions. Walk right by it. And honest to God, my uncle was probably one of those people. He would, and my dad had to tell him a few times, you cannot do that. Like, there's elderly people in there. It's people like you that, you know what I mean? The nurses aren't always at their stations, right? They're doing it based on a trust system. But my argument is, if each individual person is paying almost $5,000-$6,000 a month to live there, yeah, right, I would have a nurse sitting there doing the COVID test for people as they're coming in to secure it a little bit tighter, like put a little bit of a seal on it. Are you kidding me? And then my grandmother was getting confined to not even the nursing home, to her room. There was times where she wasn't leaving her room for almost a week or 2 weeks. They would bring everything to her. You know how exhausting that is? That's like worse than prison.
You know what else is a really bad thing that happened during COVID is you guys know what PSW workers are, right?
Yes, personal support workers.
So these are the people that they were hiring that were working these retirement homes, and they were making pretty much minimum wage, and they had to beg and fight to make like an extra $1 or $2 an hour. So they're underqualified. Most of them were immigrants, people who couldn't find a job. These poor people were working hard. They were being physically abused by the elders, being thrown up on, having shit thrown on them, being sexually abused, their stuff being stolen. And all the government had to do was subsidize their wages by offering an extra $10 an hour, let's say through the government, through a program. And now what would happen is you get better qualified nurses who'd be working, and you have more people who'd be attracted to the position. So most of these retirement homes were hiring incompetent people. Now, when you look at these retirement homes, they're all privately owned. One of the largest chains of retirement homes was owned by one of the Canadian teachers' funds, which is like worth billions of dollars.
Sorrento?
And so I forgot the name of it.
Sorrento.
So they own like 50 or 60 of these retirement homes. And when an auditor's report was done on these, it was just the auditor, the auditor who did a report on them blasted them in regards to the condition of the homes, in regards to, the way that people were being trained, in regards to the protocol that they had set up, like you said, about people actually walking in, about visitation and so on, how it was being handled. Pretty much every retirement home had a different protocol. So it wasn't even something set up by the government. You see how they controlled all the banks and the stores and the restaurants and set up all these strict rules? There was nobody enforcing any of the shit when it came to the retirement homes. So it was almost like these old people were a burden, and they're not really paying taxes. So if they go, they go. Who gives a shit, right? They weren't really that big of a concern. So I feel that when it comes to the advancement in medical science, again, I'm not saying this involves everybody, but if someone has a certain kind of illness and it's not terminal, for example, and they can survive with medication and so on, that who knows, 2 years from now, 3 years, 5 years from now, they might find a cure for it. Or they might be able to come up with some kind of a medicine that's going to end up making their standard of living a little bit better, and they can cope better, right? Another thing as well, with a lot of these people is they need therapy. They need counseling. They need to be taught coping mechanisms. They need to be given love and attention. Like if someone is a paraplegic and lying in bed, like you mentioned, a friend of yours who had like bed sores, they need someone to go through and talk to them a couple of hours a day to boost them up, their morale, and spend some time with them. And that should be funded by the fucking government. Like, what's the point of having a government and the type of country that we live in if the people who need it the most are disregarded? Like, who gives a shit? If the family can't afford to put them in a great home, fuck it. They're going to suffer. They're not going to get the proper medical treatment or the mental attention that they require. They die, they die. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. Forget about they die, they die. We're going to make it easy on you. You want to die? Sign this, and we'll just pull the plug on you.
And that's kind of where I feel it's like, is it the government's way to just, I'm not saying make it easy, but like you said, it's just
a cop out.
Yeah, like I didn't want to use those words per se, but is it just another avenue to kind of alleviate what other systems already clogged?
I think that if you were able
population control.
Yeah, I think if we were able to tap into data to figure out what the Canadian government, the cost involved in keeping people alive that are terminally ill, what the burden is on the government, that's going to answer your question. Now, the other side of it, which you're saying they're going to figure it out next year in a few months, is about individuals that are not terminally ill, that have some kind of a mental condition,
mental illness,
and possibly even like a physical ailment that's not, again, terminal, right?
Yes.
That they should be allowed as well. So I think that the first part of people who are terminally ill, I get it. There really isn't a lot of gray area there. But now if we move along to this new set of the changing basically of the rules, where now they're opening up the net a lot wider and allowing people who are not terminally ill to also have the opportunity, I feel there's way more gray area now. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? So if someone who is suffering from a mental illness or some kind of a mental disorder, or someone who's got some kind of a physical ailment, they got into, like I said, a car accident, they became paralyzed, waist down or whatever, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Should that individual have the same rights as someone who's terminally ill for assisted suicide?
So I don't agree.
So where do you feel that differs?
I think it differs just because I have myself been in a state of suicidal, like thinking suicidal ideation, stuff like that. But just because it happens doesn't mean that it sticks with you. So it's like you can get yourself out of that. And that's what makes me upset, because there's so many people who I have lost to suicide where if they would have just talked to somebody, or, like just because your mental health isn't there then doesn't mean that you can't get it back. Like that's what
Okay.
I think is.
Diane, what's your thought on that?
Okay, like I agree with everything, but I look at somebody like my father who he is long-term mentally ill in the sense that he had a nervous break. It started with a nervous breakdown. Then he developed a strong form of PSD that now has turned into agoraphobia. He has no intention on getting better. The doctor continually he does up to 160 to 180 perks a month. He drinks about 16 to 18 beers a day. He takes so many sleeping pills. He's been reported twice to his doctor. Doctor continually still prescribes him stuff and just says, well, he has the option to go to rehab. Rehab's $30,000 for private care. He is not covered by his insurance at work because he's on long-term disability for work, but his insurance company doesn't recognize addiction like that, so they don't cover it.
Sorry, you're saying he's taking 160
to 180 perks because he takes his prescription, and then he got his girlfriend to go to the doctor, and because she had a heart condition.
So he's taking like almost 6 a day.
He's just borrowing them.
Yeah, there was a time, and I hope this never gets there, but whatever. This will teach you your fucking lesson. There was a time where, because my stepmom had to hide his medication. Okay, I shouldn't talk about this. Okay.
So you've already opened up.
I already
can of
opened it.
worms
Sorry,
at this
Dad.
point.
Yeah, she had to hide his fucking medication on him. And then because she's elderly, she forgot where she hid the medication. So addict behavior comes out because now he's panicking and he's realizing, fuck, now I'm not going to have pills till I get my prescription in a few days. So now he's panicking. I'm in sobriety. You know you're long-term mentally and you're an addict when you have to call your daughter and say, hey, can you go get a street drug dealer to get me drugs, right? Jeopardize my sobriety, everything around me, my marriage, because he doesn't want to get himself better. And he said that. He's literally sat there and said to me, he goes, honestly, I'm just waiting to die.
But that's the thing. You had the option to not, but the reason you helped your father is so that Helen doesn't suffer because you don't want Helen to suffer because of your dad.
At the same time, if someone were to come to me and say, hey, you know, you could have it this way or that way, I wouldn't want to see my dad want to have the urge to wake up at 5 o'clock every morning, pop 4 perks and drink 5 beers.
So you agree then that with
on a
this
case by case basis, yeah. When my dad hasn't changed in the last 10 years. I don't think after he lost my mom and kind of shit went down. Like he's got a great girlfriend, and I think that helped him for a time. But I don't think he grieved totally properly. I think he masked the grief with a new relationship, and then he kind of started going through the grief. And I think that was hard for him to deal with. So it all kind of, and plus I had an incident where someone tried to kill me and then my heart stopped. So he got a phone call at work that I was in a coma. So he had a nervous breakdown at work and that didn't help what he was already going through with my mom. So it all kind of added up. And when I take a step back, it's kind of like, how much and how long is it going to take for him to get back to where he was even close to where he's at? And does he even want to do it? Oh.